A wealthy man once said a line that stuck with me harder than any of his advice about money. He said, "Anyone can take action. The problem is, almost no one will." He was talking about investing, but I understood right away. This isn't about money. It's about all of human life. Because think about it for a second. How many times have you known exactly what you needed to do? Not guessed, not suspected, not sort of understood. Actually knew. Knew you needed to start, to leave, to say it, to call, to sign up, to apologize, to stop, to start over. And you didn't. Maybe right now, in your life, there's a decision that's already been made inside you. You just haven't let yourself admit it out loud yet. Maybe it's a conversation that should have happened a year ago. Maybe it's a job it's time to leave. Maybe it's a relationship that turned into a habit a long time ago. Maybe it's a dream you set aside once for better times and slowly started to forget. The strangest part is that most people don't suffer from a lack of answers. They suffer from a surplus of postponed decisions. And the longer a person puts a decision off, the heavier the weight he carries inside. Because unfinished decisions don't go anywhere. They keep living in your head, taking your attention, your strength, and your energy every single day. Today, we're going to talk about exactly this, about the quietest and most widespread human tragedy. Not that people don't know what to do, but that they know and still don't move. For years, sometimes decades, sometimes their whole lives. And most importantly, we're going to talk about how to get out of it. Not get inspired for 5 minutes. Not pick up one more nice thought, but actually start moving. Let's be honest right away. Most people think their problem is a lack of information. Once I learn more, you'll start. Once I figure it all out, you'll do it. Once I find the right method, then. It's an illusion. And maybe the most comfortable illusion in the world. Because while you're studying, preparing, analyzing, comparing, and gathering information, you've got a perfect excuse to change nothing. You seem busy. You seem like you're moving. But really, you're standing still. Just standing still with a thoughtful look on your face. I know a man. Let's call him Mark. For 3 years, he wanted to leave a job that was literally burning him out from the inside. 3 years. In that time, he read books on changing careers, took several online courses, subscribed to dozens of channels about the professions of the future, put together a few versions of his resume, started a spreadsheet of openings, studied the market, compared salaries, learned the requirements. You know how many applications he sent in all that time? Not one. He was the most prepared person of everyone who went nowhere. He had the entire map. He just never took a single step on it. And you know what's saddest? After 3 years, Mark genuinely knew a lot more. But his life looked almost the same. He'd gotten more experienced at studying change. He just hadn't gotten any closer to actually changing. This is one of the most dangerous traps there is. We think knowledge automatically changes a life. But knowledge without action is like medicine sitting on a shelf. You can know perfectly well what's inside the box. You can read the instructions carefully. You can even explain to other people how it works. But until the medicine is taken, the illness stays. And here's what matters to understand. Mark isn't lazy. Mark isn't stupid. Mark isn't irresponsible. He ended up in a trap that an enormous number of people sit in. He confused preparing to act with the act itself. And those are two completely different worlds. Why does this happen? Why is there such a huge gap between I know and I do? Why can a person dream, plan, and understand for years and still stay in the same place? There are a few mechanisms here, and it's important to name them. Because an enemy you can see is much easier to beat. The first mechanism. The brain protects you from uncertainty. Any new action carries risk. and the human brain is built to avoid risk and preserve predictability. So very often, a familiar bad situation feels safer to it than an unfamiliar good one. That's exactly why these thoughts show up. Not now. I need to prepare a little more. Let me figure it out first. It'll be more convenient later. This isn't necessarily your weakness. It's an ancient survival mechanism that often confuses new with dangerous. There's an interesting observation from psychologists. People far more often choose familiar suffering over unknown improvement. Not because they love suffering, but because predictability creates a sense of safety. That's why someone stays for years in a relationship that long ago stopped bringing any joy. Why someone works for years where they've long been unhappy. Why someone puts off, for years, a conversation that could change their entire life. Not because they're doing well, but because the pain they already know feels less frightening than the change they don't. And if you think about it honestly, many of the biggest losses in life don't come from wrong decisions. They come from decisions that were never made at all. The second mechanism, the fear of losing face. Until you've tried, you can think anything you want about yourself. I could. I would have pulled it off. It's just not the right time. If I wanted to, I'd have done it long ago. But the moment real action shows up, so does risk. The risk of learning the truth, the risk of facing the result, the risk of seeing your own limits, the risk of failing. And this is exactly where a lot of people unconsciously make a strange deal. They choose to preserve the pretty picture of themselves rather than test it against reality. And here a paradox is hiding. A lot of people think they're afraid of failure, but very often it's not failure they fear at all. They're afraid of learning the truth about themselves. Until a person has started acting, he can live in the fantasy of how successful, talented, or capable he might be. But action destroys fantasies. It shows you reality. And reality sometimes hits your pride hard. So some people prefer, for years, to keep the dream in a safe state. The dream stays beautiful. It's just that life stays the same. And it's a terrible deal. A person trades a real life for the preservation of a pretty picture of himself, and often doesn't even notice he made the deal a long time ago. The third mechanism, waiting for the perfect moment. At first glance, it looks reasonable. A person tells himself, now isn't the best time. I need to prepare a little more. I have to wait for the right circumstances. When things calm down, that's when I'll start. It sounds logical. The problem is, the perfect moment doesn't exist. There will never be a day when all your doubts disappear. There will never be a week without some new problem in it. There will never come a morning when you wake up and suddenly feel 100% sure. Because life doesn't work that way. And very often, a person doesn't even notice how waiting turns into a way of life. First, he puts the decision off for a week, then a month, then a year. And then one day he looks back and realizes 10 years have gone by, and nothing has changed. There's a question people rarely ask themselves. Not what happens if I try, but what happens if I don't? We love to calculate the risks of acting, but we almost never calculate the risks of not acting. And those are often much higher. What will things look like in 5 years if everything stays the way it is? What about in 10? What will your life look like if you keep putting off the exact decision you thought of at the start of this video? Because the truth is this: time will pass anyway, whether you decide or not. The only question is whether you'll end up somewhere else in your life, or in the exact same place, with the same thoughts, the same regrets, the same excuses. Sometimes people say, I'm afraid of making the wrong choice. But in many cases, the most expensive choice has already been made. It's the choice to change nothing. That's exactly why waiting for the perfect moment is so dangerous. It looks safe. But the cost of that safety is usually hidden. It gets charged a little at a time, every day, every month, every year. And one day the realization comes that you've paid far too much. A short pause. If this conversation is landing with you, please leave a like. Thank you. And now, the most important part. Because understanding the problem doesn't change anything yet. You can understand all the mechanisms we've talked about perfectly. You can agree with every word. You can even recognize yourself, and still do nothing. So the main question now is different. What do you do about it? Not in theory, in practice, concretely. And before we get to the tools, I want to say one important thing. The good news is that the problem usually isn't laziness. Laziness is a convenient explanation, but it's usually too shallow. Most of the time, a person isn't fighting laziness. He's fighting fear, uncertainty, inner doubt, the desire to keep his familiar picture of the world. And that you can actually work with. Because what becomes visible stops fully running you. Sometimes one moment of clarity is enough to take the first step. Not because the fear is gone, but because you finally understand who you're dealing with. So, how do you start moving, even when it's frightening? How do you cross from "I understand" to "I'm doing it"? Let's start with the most important, the first tool. Shrink the step until it's almost laughable. The main mistake most people make is trying to change their whole life at once. They say, "I need to change careers. I need to get in shape. I need to start my own business. I need to fix my relationship." And the brain looks at all of it like a giant mountain whose peak it can't even see. Naturally, it starts to resist. Too much unknown, too big a scale, too high a risk. So the first rule is very simple. Shrink the step until it's almost laughable. Not change jobs. Send one application today. Not start running. Just go outside for 5 minutes. Not write a book. Write one paragraph. Not make peace with your father. Dial his number. The step has to be so small the brain doesn't have time to set off the alarm. So small that turning it down would feel almost embarrassing. Because life doesn't change because of giant decisions. It changes because of decisions that repeat. No one becomes a different person in a single day. But a person can become a different person through 1,000 small actions. The second tool. Separate preparation from action. Preparation isn't the enemy. Preparation is necessary. The problem starts when it becomes a permanent place of residence. Tell yourself honestly, how many things in your life have been in the preparing stage for a year now? Maybe 2? Maybe 5? So set a simple rule. Preparation has to have an end date. For example, until Friday, I study this question. On Friday, I take the first real action. Let it be small. Let it be imperfect, but real. Without a deadline, preparation turns into a couch. With a deadline, it becomes a launch pad. There are people who prepare for life, and there are people who live. And very often from the outside, they look the same. But after a few years, the difference becomes enormous. The third tool. Count actions, not intentions. The brain loves to reward us for intentions. You thought about the goal, and you already feel a little better. You made a plan, even better. You watched a useful video. What a star. But life doesn't change from intentions. It changes from actions. So instead of the question, "What did I think about today?" ask a different one. What did I actually do today? One action. One call, one application, one conversation, one step. If the answer is 0, There's no need to beat yourself up. Just honestly admit the fact. There was no movement today, which means tomorrow needs at least one step. The fourth tool: stop waiting for the fear to disappear. This is maybe the most important thought in the whole video, because thousands of people get stuck right here. They say, when I stop being afraid, it'll start. When I feel confident, it'll do it. When it gets easier, it'll decide. But it almost never happens that way. Fear doesn't leave before the action. Fear leaves after the action. First the step, then the relief. First the conversation, then the calm. First the decision, then the clarity. Not the other way around. Think about any important event in your life. A move, a new job, a marriage, the birth of a child. Did you feel absolute certainty beforehand? Most likely, no. Fear was almost always standing right there next to you. But it was through that fear that the change happened. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is the ability not to let fear make decisions in your place. And now, the thing all of this maybe was worth recording for. There's a very old story about three people who were each given something at the start. One more, the others less. One put what he'd received to work, so did the second. But the third buried it, didn't lose it, didn't waste it, didn't gamble it away, just buried it until better times, until a more convenient moment, until more certainty, until better circumstances. And in the end, it was with him that the hardest conversation came. Not because he had little, but because he never put to work what he had. It's a parable 2,000 years old, but it speaks to exactly what we've been talking about this whole time. What ruins most people isn't a lack of opportunities. What ruins them is the endless postponing of what's already in their hands. We wait for a better time, for more certainty, for more clarity. And in the meantime, life passes. A year from now, you'll almost certainly know more than you do today. You'll read new books, watch new videos, learn new ideas. But the question isn't how much you'll know. The question is different. Will you take in that year even one step you're avoiding right now? Because a person's fate rarely changes in a single day. It changes through small decisions that seem insignificant in the moment. One call, one application, one conversation, one honest admission, one step forward. And very often, it's that exact step that separates two completely different lives. Not motivation, not inspiration, not the perfect plan, but action. Even if it's small, even if it's imperfect, even if it's unsure, but real. So today, you don't need to change your whole life. You don't need to make 10 decisions. You don't need to start a new chapter. You need one step. One. The one you thought of back at the start of this video. The one you've been putting off for a long time. Not a plan, not a promise, not preparation. An action. Briefly, so it stays with you. Most people get stuck not because they don't know what to do. They get stuck because they know and don't do it. Preparation can look like movement, but it often turns out to be a comfortable form of standing still. The brain is afraid of uncertainty. A person is afraid of losing the pretty picture of himself. Everyone waits for a perfect moment that doesn't exist. Shrink the step until it's almost laughable. Put a time limit on preparation. Count actions, not intentions. Don't wait for the fear to disappear. Fear usually leaves after the step, not before it. And remember, what you've been given reveals itself in motion. One small, real step today is worth more than a perfect plan that gets put off, again, until later. If this video was useful, leave a like. And write in the comments one thing you've been putting off for a long time. Not 10. Not a list of goals. 1. Sometimes the first step begins with a person honestly naming it out loud. Subscribe if conversations like this are close to you, without the noise, without the cheap motivation, without promises of an easy life. And if, while watching, you thought of a person stuck between I know and I do, send them this video. No pressure, just as a quiet nudge. Because sometimes that's exactly the nudge a person has been missing for years. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time.